That didn't work.
You can continue.
Welcome to We the World and our 2025 MLK Manifesting the Dream event. Each year, we take time to remember Martin Luther King Jr. and his beloved community. And each year, we are thrilled to feature the many people and organizations who have taken action to be of service, not only in January and February, but all year round. We at We the World welcome you to take action and be of service at we.net/MLK from January 15th to February 28th. Please join us in being a part of this annual celebration and consider being of service in your communities and with us. Of course, donations are very appreciated at we.net/donate. My name is Yana Larson, and I am the HR Deputy Director of We the World. Today, we welcome Dr. Barbe Chambliss and Rita Marsh. Dr. Barbe Chambliss is a trauma therapist, mediator, and educator specializing in peacemaking and conflict resolution. With a PhD focused on peacemaking, she has interviewed over 60 women peacemakers worldwide, culminating in her book, Women Peacemakers, What We Can Learn from Them. Her work has taken her from counseling war-affected children in Croatia to facilitating Restorative Justice Circles for youth in Colorado. Barbe has trained over 60 individuals in mediation and teaches conscious peacemaking in schools and businesses, fostering nonviolent approaches to conflict resolution. Rita Marsh is a retired family nurse practitioner with over 45 years of experience in healthcare and wellness education. She co-founded and serves as board chair of the Center for Human Flourishing in Carbondale, Colorado, which promotes integral health through education, the arts, and self-empowerment. Her work focuses on enhancing well-being, reducing stress, and supporting healthful aging with a deep commitment to bioregional regeneration and the connection between human and environmental health. Rita's vision is to foster healing at personal, community, and global levels through the transformation of consciousness. Welcome, Dr. Barbe Chambliss and Rita Marsh.
Thank you, Yana.
Thank you very much, Jana. This is a privilege to be part of the honoring of Dr. Martin Luther King. One of his tenets was to build beloved community, and Barbe's work is certainly essential for that. What we're going to do today is to share a program that was recorded here at the Center for Human Flourishing 2 years ago that focused on Barbe's work. We'll share this beautiful film that was produced by Dave Taylor from Cool Brick Studios here in Carbondale. And then Barbe will be available to answer any questions that might come in through chat or through the audience that we're hoping will be joining us here online. So bear with me for just a moment. I'm going to share screen.
Also, I'd just like to say if Yana and Rita could help keep track of anything that comes in on chat and let me know, that would be helpful.
We'll do that. Let's see. Okay. A longtime trauma therapist and mediator who lives in Western Colorado. My name is Rita Marsh. I'm the co-founder of the Center for Human Flourishing in Carbondale, Colorado. Welcome to this presentation by Barbe Chambliss, PhD, titled Conscious Peacemaking, an Essential Skill for the 21st Century. Barb is a longtime trauma therapist and mediator who lives in Western Colorado. Several years ago, she chose to study peacemaking for her PhD dissertation. She has personally interviewed over 60 women peacemakers from around the world, exploring the nuts and bolts of how this kind of peace is made. Her book, Women Peacemakers: What We Can Learn from Them, contains the stories of 15 of these women. In this presentation, Barb will share the background story of how she came to do this extraordinary work. She will tell us about a few of the women interviewed and how she came to weave their stories into the book. You can support her work by purchasing Women Peacemakers: What We Can Learn from Them. Barb has archived interviews of many more women and will be compiling these in a second, maybe a third book. Conscious Peacemaking, an essential skill for the 21st century, contains critical information for now. Thank you, Barb, for your dedication to bringing the tenets of peacemaking in a package that individuals and groups can learn from and employ in their lives.
So we've named this Conscious Peacemaking, an essential skill for the 21st century. And I think everybody in here at least knows that I wrote the book, maybe has read the book, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how the book came about, and then a lot about what I've learned from the book, from the women there, and from teaching some things from the book about what kind of peacemaking this is. And I'm pretty convinced it's one of the most unique kinds of peacemaking and the most ubiquitously available kind of peacemaking for anybody to be able to do. It just hasn't seen the light of day. It's like, I call it, hidden in plain sight. And hopefully tonight it's not going to be in plain sight anymore. So, since I was a kid, I wanted to know how peace was made because of some stuff that happened to me around age 6. But it really got in gear when I went to school and then college with guys that all got drafted in Vietnam. And they would be taken off to boot camp, and then they'd come back for a couple weeks before they got shipped off to Vietnam, and they talked about how you make war. They had it down. Boot camp taught them that. And I kept going like, well, how do we teach the opposite? How do you have a boot camp for how to make peace? There wasn't a very good answer, but I just kept kind of plugging away at it and became a mediator, became a trauma therapist, taught over 500 kids and teachers and parents in this valley how to be peace place mediators. And then I went through more education than is necessary for anybody to have, but I ended up with a PhD. And they said, what topic do you want to choose? And I just opened my mouth and peacemaking came out. So I had a great committee guiding my dissertation with a woman that just believed in what I wanted to do. Most people, I'll tell you in a minute in the talk, most people have a theory that they want to prove in a PhD. Then they go do the research and they either prove it or disprove it. I didn't have a theory. I just wanted to go interview women peacemakers. I don't know what got into me. I was amazed at how I financed the whole thing. I put my tuition on my Mileage Plus credit card, and every time I had enough miles, I would go interview a woman somewhere and take one of my kids with me if I had enough miles. So my 9-year-old went to Croatia and Israel and Ireland with me, and my 21-year-old went to Africa, 2 different places in Africa, and you'll meet some of the women that we interviewed. So, so that was sort of like how the universe and I together gathered all these stories. But gathering stories is nothing compared to getting a book out. So I had the stories, and I had no idea what to do with all these stories. And I went to a team of 3 women here in Carbondale that I would recommend for anybody to go to. That's called Light of the Moon. And they turned out this amazing book. There's an editor that was impeccable. There's a graphics lady, and not only graphics, she knows how to get the ISBN and everything about a book. And then there was one that started off the marketing. And any help I can get with marketing, I'm appreciative for, because it's not my forte. I've always not wanted people to market stuff to me, but I'm learning over the course of time that this is something, how do I put it, not to keep quiet about. Let's put it that way. So one of the things I wanted to show you that I love about this book, the book is winning awards. Every time I enter it, almost every time, I get a first, a second, or a third, or a finalist award. But Elisa Onmak, who is the graphics lady there, said to me, you've collected all the pictures from these women, and let me tell you how much it's going to cost to print your book that way, with them at the first of your chapter. And I went, okay, and I was blown away. I thought, I don't have the money to do that. She said, I know. We're going to have a color, and the reason is because when you put anything colored anywhere in any book, the price goes up because every single page has to be run on color quality paper. And so she said, we're going to have a color cover for it anyway. Let's put all the women on here, and then let's bid out to Fiverr or someplace, I wish I could remember the name of it, to see if anybody can make black and white renditions of these women. So she put it out for bid. We got 43 people that wanted to do it. And so on the front here, you've got Cheeto from Zimbabwe up here. And in the book, you've got this, which is pretty amazing. I mean, even if they didn't have colored photos. The colored photos were all different resolutions. These she did with dots. She said she's a dot expert. And I'm going like, somehow heaven sent her to me. And I feel really grateful. Her name is Dana Bishop. And so I went about interviewing the women. The committee said, you need to define what you mean by peace. So I did that. I looked up in the dictionary, and it was all pretty complicated, and the first thing I hit was there was a gun called the Peacemaker. And I went like, well, I don't want that one. So I did something that could be universally understood, and I made it visual. So if you could do this with me if you want. You can put your hands out in front of you like you're going to collect water in them. This is my rendition of peace, because these hands are equal. Equal in respect, equal in opportunity, equal in trust, whatever you want to call it. This is peace in my mind. This is not, because you've got a dominant and subordinate, or a major and a minor element to it. So I would say to people, do you know any woman that is making this happen? And it was magic. I got thousands of nominations for this book. The committee said, okay, it's one thing to have Joe Schmo on the street nominate people for you, but you also have to have the woman nominate herself. And I thought, piece of cake. It was not a piece of cake. And I'll tell you why as we go along. So I was at home, and I said to my kids, I said, wow, I don't know if I can do this, meeting the committee requirements. And my older son said, Mom, ask them their definition of peace. And then ask them if they're doing anything to make that happen. And the women all went like, well, yeah, I am doing that. So I would just stay quiet. And I'd watch a transformation on their face as they would step in. And before they called themselves doctors or sculptors or teachers. But I watched them step into the mantle of being a peacemaker, which shifts from unconscious peacemaking to conscious peacemaking. And this book is all about conscious peacemaking. So those were the first two questions I asked all the women. What's your definition of peace? Tell me about, or do you feel like the work you're doing brings that about? Tell me about your work. How did you find your work? How do you fund your work? How do you stick with the work when it gets really rough? What role do you think forgiveness plays in peacemaking? What advice would you give somebody that wanted to become a peacemaker? One of the problems with the word peacemaker is it's pretty nebulous. It's hard to define. So they answered all of these questions in 3 to 4 hour interviews in their homes often, or in place when it was too dangerous for it to be in their home, like when we went to Ireland, the troubles were big time there. And so we met in a motel. And it was great. These women we'd take a break and they'd go play cards with my son. So I was just trying to get my kids to get a sense of what peacemaking is too. I'm still trying to figure out how they've carried that through in their adult lives, but they're carrying it through. So then I came back and I had to go find a theory. And let's see, there it is. I looked and looked and looked, and nobody captured what these women were doing except a man from England named Adam Curley. And by this time, I was really used to, when somebody would give me the nomination of a woman, I'd say, do you have her phone number? And they'd say, sure, here it is. And then I'd call Brazil, or I'd call Ireland, or I'd call places. So I had no qualms about cold calling people. So I looked up Adam Curley and I called him up. And he said, yeah, I can talk to you for about 20 minutes because an ambulance is coming to my house. And he died shortly after that. So like the universe and the timing and things like that. So let me just explain this. The kind of peacemaking you'll find in this book, if this is awareness of conflict, it's really high up there. In this lower level, people don't even know that there is conflict going. They don't know why they're subjugated. They just put their foot in front of it, each foot every day, and they just keep doing it. But you say, do you feel like you're oppressed? And they go like, huh? So this is work that somebody else looked at them and said, wait a minute, this isn't really fair. This doesn't seem to work. So what often happens to these groups of people by peacemakers is education. And there's several examples of education in here. And what this does is gets them aware enough about what this means that they finally, it's very static down here because they don't know that they've got an opportunity to move up. Then they start to move up here, and this is when you get riots, when you get unions acting out, when you get people going like, hey, we deserve this. And most of the women's work is around here, and some of it's up here. And you can see this is like balanced, where these things are pretty balanced. Over here, it's like sometimes there are huge differences. And so when this gets done with the confrontation of one sort or another, it shifts over into here where they start negotiating. This is when they get to the negotiation table, things like that. And then if this works, you go up in here to what we call a sustainable peace. It's not a static peace, it's a peace that keeps moving like this. And we have here, this is the grassroots level. These women are working at the tree root level. In fact, the name of my dissertation was Women Peacemakers, the Hidden Side of Peacemaking. And boy, do they want it hidden. If the press comes here, everything falls apart because the power structure goes like, hey, what's going on over there? So this is done pretty quietly, often by one person. We'll go look in a minute at the characteristics of who does this kind of peace or how it gets done. So the next one would be aspects of conscious peacemaking. A conscious process of giving someone or something, like an animal, like the earth, like another person, a hand up, not a hand out, to empower themselves into a position of equal respect. So I'm not helping you get empowered. I'm helping you find out how to empower yourself. And so this kind of peacemaking actually, if you've got an inequity here, there are several ways to make these equal. One is to push this one down. It doesn't work. It doesn't last for very long, but that's rebellion. It's tried a lot. But you can also do this, or this. But this kind of peacemaking is not this. This kind of peacemaking is this. It takes two people, and they're working together, and they keep asking the question is like, am I treating this other person the way I would want to be treated? And together, they raise up so that the opportunities are equal. and then they can step out on their own. So it's proactive, it's at the tree root level. There has to be an expressed need, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later. You don't go do things for people. If they ask for it, and you've got the capability to work with them to do it, then you have to decide if you're up for that. And often hidden and quiet, and involves a conscious daily commitment to do the work. That's pretty important. You get up every day and go like, am I up for this? Am I dedicated to this? And you will hear stories of incredible dedication of these women. In spite of, I mean, most of us would have quit. Some of them stuck it out with patience longer than any of us would have. I want to add a couple more words to the aspects of this. I'm going to add the word regenerative. This is regenerative because the best example is when you take a Maasai girl who has been in a tradition that does not educate Maasai girls, but you find a way to get them educated, what they do is they go back and help out their younger siblings. Or they go back, if they can get enough education to get up to a trade or into college, and they become nurses or doctors, they go home and they upgrade the whole village.
Yes, I wish I can make it. My dreams to become true. Or becoming a doctor. Yes, a doctor. A doctor out of a Maasai girl.
All my life I always want to make an impact on someone else's life. My name is Rita Pello Elizabeth. You can call me Dr. Pello Elizabeth. I am from Oldonyoke village, and I just finished med school. Got my degree from Kenyatta University.
So the situation is richer, safer, more peaceful at the end of when they're like this. They go back and they regenerate it. The other word I would add here is reciprocal. When you do this, you cannot believe what happens to you. You feel like you've got value. You learn a lot. You are proud of yourself. I'll explain when I'll tell you I've been working with high school kids on this. When I watch how the high school kids feel when they do an act of conscious peacemaking, they stand up taller when they finish their acts of peacemaking. I would also add the word hidden in plain sight. Everybody's doing this kind of peacemaking all the time. All the time. There's hundreds of these. It just doesn't get to the press. And sometimes it doesn't get to the conscious level of us. Like, I would go interview a woman who had this amazing story and say, well, would you call yourself a peacemaker? And she'd go like, well, I don't think so. So even the peacemakers, it's hidden from themselves. It's like, no, I just did an act of kindness, or I just did this. And I would say to them, please, if you feel that you fit the definition of peacemaker, call yourself a peacemaker. Introduce yourself as saying, well, I'm 62 years old, I've been a teacher for 10 years, I'm an active peacemaker, I like embroidery, whatever it is, put it in your resume, because the world needs that so much. Some people would say, oh, it's too presumptuous for me to call myself a peacemaker, and I go like, a shooter that walks into a school and kills a bunch of kids doesn't feel like it's presumptuous. They just walk right in and do it, and they get in the press. So do not hide behind presumptuous. Presume that it's okay to come out as a peacemaker. It's better for the world if you can voice that. And the boldest thing I say about this kind of peacemaking is that it has the potential, it's a big, bold statement, it has the potential to make war irrelevant. And I'll show you why as we begin to go through the women's stories. Make war irrelevant. It has the potential, it doesn't guarantee it, but it has the potential to do that. It's also very proactive. This starts early. You can't do this kind of peacemaking when two kids are having a fight on the playground. You can't do this kind of peacemaking, as you'll hear, right now you can't do this kind of peacemaking in Ukraine right now. So let's go to the next one. The next one is something I simply found that I think is very true about this kind of peacemaking. Peacemaking does not mean passivity. It is the act of interrupting injustice without mirroring injustice. The act of disarming evil without destroying the evildoer. The act of finding a third way that is neither fight nor flight, but the careful, arduous pursuit of reconciliation and justice. It is about a revolution of love that is big enough to set both the oppressed and the oppressors free. It's from a man named Shane Claiborne, who calls himself the activist priest or something like that, I think. So, let me tell you a little bit about what this kind of peacemaking is not. I'm going to read you a little bit from my dissertation. As I was interviewing all the women, about halfway through, I got a flyer in my mailbox from a woman named Judith Genya, and it was sent by a friend in Marsh Corbin in Aspen, and it basically said, could you give money to a global children's organization? And I read the description, I thought, well, this is kind of interesting, so I called her up and I said, well, I don't have a lot of money for donations, but if you're in Los Angeles, if you're going to hold a camp for Bosnian kids, I could come cook at your camp. She said, you're on. This is what this is all about. It's about volunteerism, and you're going to find out you get more than the kids get. And she said, by the way, I just want to let you know, it's not in Los Angeles, it's in Croatia. And it's going to cost you $480 to come to the camp, and I want another $480 to bring a kid to the camp. And I went, I think I'm hooked. So I took two 60-pound duffel bags of swimming suits and music and clothing and soap and got on an airplane with another woman here in town named Nancy Kiner, and we went to Bosnia to be at this camp. And here's what I said about it in the dissertation. In the summer of 1996, I volunteered to work in Judith's camp for Bosnian war-torn children. At this time, I was still entrenched in my idea that peacemaking was negotiating peace between warring parties. In order to understand the backdraft life these children had lived, I read several books and papers on the Balkan situation. I also read the Dayton Accord, the document resulting from the peace that had been brokered between the Serbs, the Bosnians, and the Croatians, 5 months before the camp was to be held. As a mediator, I was impressed with the results, given the bloodiness of the war and the intractable history. Roads and bridges were to be rebuilt. Elections were to be held. Homes and villages were to be restored to their original owners. The dead were to be accounted for. Someone, I thought, must be a very skilled mediator to forge such an agreement in Dayton, Ohio, thousands of miles from the sniper bullets of the war itself. The camp changed my life. Each night I rubbed the feet of children, trying to prepare them for the nightmares of their father being shot in front of them, of their mother being raped in front of them, of their best friend being killed by a sniper's bullet 2 feet away from them on a basketball court, of their grandmothers going out for water and never returning, of their best friend's father betraying them, of their family beloved furniture being sparingly burned to keep warm through the winters of living with no heat and no windows. These children were able to revel in learning how to swim in the ocean as one of the camp activities, and their disco dancing became more loose and joyous as the camp progressed. But when it came time to do artwork, they drew pictures of their village with no people in them, of guns and helicopters and blood. They were skilled at doing fine motor activities, things they had practiced in cellars and shelters, waiting for the mortars to cease. But the gross motor activities, such as basketball and soccer, had been too exposed to be safe. In a last vengeful assault on the war, 40 of these children lost every male in their family over the age of 14, leaving the 10-year-olds as the men of the family. After the camp, the children begged us to travel to their homes or their refugee centers with them. They basically said to us, please come, see what happened, go home and talk about it, because we don't think anybody in the world knew this war was going on. Because if they knew, why didn't they stop it? This war was 4 years. Our bus wound its way through the steep mountains of truly war-torn landscape. The ride was arduous as we often had to stop to allow for one-way traffic where the mountain roads and bridges had been blown up, or for the UN peacekeepers' checkpoints, or for custom checks when crossing the border between Croatia and Bosnia. At some point, the travelers were not allowed back on the bus. Some travelers would get off the bus because they were called off the bus, and then the bus would take off without them. They were not allowed to get back on the bus. When we entered Mostar, a town with Bosnians living on one side of the river and Croatians on the other, the hatred was palpable, something I had never experienced before. I did not see one rural building that was untouched by grenades and mortars. Muslims' mosques had been mortared, burned, bulldozed, and then grass was planted on top of it as a special ethnic cleansing effort. The former Olympic Stadium in Sarajevo had been turned into a cemetery with all the grave markers reading 1992 or later. The National Library in Sarajevo, the equivalent of our National Library of Congress, but with eons of centuries of history, was especially targeted with incendiary grenades to make sure that all of the contents were fully burned. My experience at the former Yugoslavia spoke of anything but peace. It felt more like a forest full of dry tinder ready to reignite at any moment. I was literally heartsick, not only at the devastation that war wreaks, but at the sense of being duped into believing that peace could be brokered by reconstructing things like houses and roads and schools. What was desperately needed was some means of reconstructing relationships, like trust and hope and self-dignity. It seemed that 2 weeks of helping children from different ethnic backgrounds play safely together had done more towards this end than the Dayton Accord. How could a venue like mediation even pretend to negotiate things like betrayal and mass slaughter and destroyed heritages, especially when the war criminals freely walked the streets even after their indictments? I wrote off mediated peace negotiations as being overrated, a naive hoax of peacemaking, even though I myself was a mediator. Since that time, however, several things have happened to alter my rigid stance. First, I realized that if the Dayton Accord had not been negotiated before the camp, I could never have safely traveled with the children to their homes. It might have been risky for the children to even travel 10 hours by bus to reach the camp through the war zones. Second, I followed the news of former Yugoslavia, which had kind of melted down to the whole state of Serbia. I read of the heroic nonviolent revolutions led by the students and the citizens of Serbia. The minute they got word of the media that was not state-sponsored media in Serbia, they went like, whoa, what's really going on? And when that happened, the citizens of Serbia had what they called a velvet revolution. And they toppled Milosevic. I realized that the ceasefire negotiation negotiated by the Dayton Accord laid the foundation for this happening. I began to realize that the repair of relationships is slow going and dangerous while the bullets are flying. How do you do, literally, what's the recipe for making peace the way the women in this book do? And so, some of you have heard this, but it's a good thing to hear more than once. I'm going to read, I asked every woman what they would tell anyone that wanted to be a peacemaker. And they had great advice based on their stories. For instance, the one I love the most is the clan mother up at Standing Rock. She basically said, tell them to go find an elder. And I thought, yeah, you would say that. That's what your work has been about. But then after I got all of these things laid out and I had all of their stories and their traits up on a wall, I saw commonalities across the board that these women actually practiced in their work. So I want to read you those 24 things. Number 1, be awake when the opportunity presents itself. Number 2, Develop your service in response to people's expressed sense of need. When listening for this, be sure that you're listening to understand their needs, not listening to validate your preconceived needs of what is needed, your preconceived ideas of what is needed. Number 3, never lose sight of your goal and never get attached to how you get there. Number 4, learn who the local peacemakers are and be respectful of their peacemaking traditions. Number 5, every day, revisit the wisdom of and your willingness to continue this work. Number 6, operate from unconditional caring, not from sentimentality. Number 7, making a difference in the world might be your primary form of compensation, rather than financial compensation. If you need money to do your work, be creative about sourcing it. Number 8, work under the radar of the oppressors when called for. Number 9, work with and not for. Work alongside those who request your services. Number 10, acknowledge, validate, and nurture the strengths of those with whom you work. Number 11, work simultaneously at both the individual and the system level. Number 12, pace yourself. Make a little peace, make a little dinner. Know that your work might not be completed in your lifetime. Number 13, be aware of that peacemaking may be, but does not have to be, dangerous. Provide for your safety. Number 14, be willing to hang out on the margins of society without taking it personally. Number 15, practice patience and persistence and employ them both simultaneously. Number 16, most of your learning will be on-the-job training or osmosis from other peacemakers. Observe what your mentors do and don't do and why. Number 17, first go small and deep with your work, and then think about the wisdom of going bigger. Many peacemakers stay small and deep. Number 18, sometimes anger works as a good motivator, but it is an unwise and dangerous and a terrible plan of action. Number 19, rising up out of a depression can launch amazing acts of peacemaking. And likewise, doing acts of peacemaking can, but doesn't always, dispel depression. Provide for your mental healthiness. Number 20, do not use violence of any kind, including to yourself. Number 21, when making choices, choose what keeps you in integrity with your goals and your conscience. Number 22, pray. Number 23, the amount of outside pressure you may feel from those that disapprove of your work may be great. Meet it with a greater amount of inner resolve, integrity, and grit. And number 24, when overwhelmed by what you can't do, refocus on what you can do, and then proceed with the next right thing. That is the recipe for how this kind of conscious peacemaking happens. If you want to know how to make bread, you go like a bread recipe. If you want to know how to make this kind of peace, it's right here in chapter 17 of this book. So the next question is, who can do this kind of peacemaking? Well, clearly you know that there are at least 15 women, and the truth is I've now interviewed almost 60 women all over the world that meet this criteria. So the problem with these stories is everybody goes like, wow, I could never do the phenomenal things that these women are doing. So part of what I want to show you tonight is that, yeah, these women can do it, and their stories are very inspiring, but you don't have to do it the way the women did it. You can do it at school. You can do it at home. You can do it on your land if you see a tree getting cut down that shouldn't be cut down, things like that. So anyone and everyone can do this. It is not rocket science. It is steady following the recipe. And But let me just tell you a little bit about some of these women. This is Sister Mary Vertucci in Tanzania. She found a way to provide education for the Maasai girls. She didn't educate them. She brought them from their villages where there was no educational opportunity for them into Arusha, Tanzania, and gave them a place to sleep, a place that was safe, a way to study for the exams to even get into the schools, and then a lot of encouragement once they were in the school. And one of her quotes is, "If you educate a woman, you educate a whole nation. Investing in the education of girls can be one investment with the highest return in the developing world." And also, I just wanted to let you know that when I talk about the book, I usually try and bring with me something that I've gathered in one of the interviews. And this necklace is made by the Maasai women. So, I mean, they're not lacking in elegance there, let me tell you. Another one would be Clan Mother Rochelle Figueroa, who I interviewed up at Standing Rock. It's chapter 2 in the book. And basically what she told me was so important because 6 months after Standing Rock, she passed away. So I felt really privileged to have this interview with her so she could just really highlight what she'd been doing with her work. She said, "We should all acknowledge that each one of us were put on this planet at this important time in history for a reason. It's our duty and responsibility to speak up for the voiceless." She's the one basically that has gone to other clan mothers and elders in the Native American nation and said, stand up. Not so that you have to be the leaders now, but so that you can lead with good men, which was a pretty unique message. Another one of the chapters is about Ruchama Marton. Ruchama was, her chapter starts off by describing her living in Israel prior to 1948, which was one of the most peaceful times ever in Israel. Then when she turned to be about, I think she was around 11 or 12, or maybe by the time she was 18 and went into the military, everything, her eyes got opened up to a lot of things. And she's the one that makes me say, this kind of peacemaking has the potential to make war irrelevant. She gives examples in her story, and she says this: when peace is made, it is a synonym for respect. When people respect each other, then this last sentence is really important. They're willing to share power. Enough said. The next one is a woman named Connie Ning. Connie did her work a little bit in Vietnam, and she did such a good job of starting microloans there that the Vietnamese communist leaders in the country basically came and said, good job, we'll take it over now. And so she thought she was like done with her job, but then she ended up in Guatemala and did the same kind of thing there. One of the phenomenal things about Connie's work there is that she gave microloans to the Mayan women whose husbands had been killed in the genocide. And the women learned trades, and they started having shops on the streets and things like that. And if the women paid back their loans, she said, you can borrow them, you can go for a second loan, and if you do, because you've done good payback on your first loan, we'll educate your kid. So they paid the uniform fees, the school fees, and everything like that. And it was very successful, and Connie went like, oh my gosh, we've got a whole bunch of kids that are now ready to go to the middle school. So she shifted her program to lift those kids up too. And then they went to high school, and she shifted her program to lift those kids up. She's the only peacemaker I followed that actually saw the need as it evolved. And finally, she and her husband went like, you know what? Some of those kids want to go to trade school or to college. Let's start a huge scholarship fund for them called the Quetzal Fund. She said, forget the incremental change stuff. These women are leaping over 4 to 5 generations. Can the daughter of an illiterate single mother become a physician? We think so, and we're going to find out what happens when she does. And the fifth one here is Judith, Jenya, the woman that asked me to not come cook in her kitchen in Los Angeles, but come to Croatia. And this is what she said. The concept of hatred growing in the hearts and minds of yet another generation of children is abhorrent to me. I think one way to do that is to interrupt it with goodness, the power of goodness. And I'll tell you something interesting about Judith. To my, I would say, embarrassment, most of the women that are in this book don't know this book exists. I haven't quite known how to get it out to all of them. And about 2 weeks ago, I got an email from Judith, and she said, hey, I saw that you wrote a book. I saw that I'm in the book. And she said, you helped me decide to write a memoir. Would you be willing to comment on my memoir? And I went like, this is it. This is the beginning. I need to get these books out to these women. So I'm starting to do that with her. So let's keep going back. So we know that there are these really cool women that do this kind of work. What about other people? The 18th chapter in this book asks for anybody that's read this book or heard the book, because I read the audio story, to please do an act of peacemaking and send it in to me. Because I'm still collecting peacemaking. I hope to get peacemaker stories from prisoners, from men, from children, from refugees, from all sorts of places. I've just put my whole impetus into chapter 18. And in the first 18 months that this book was out, I got 6 stories. Not very many. Because people felt presumptuous. Every time I would talk to a book club, and I'd say, if any of you want to do a peacemaking in the future, let me know. I'll talk you through it, and we'll write it up in a 2-page thing. And then I got smart, and I said, well, maybe since you've heard what this peacemaking is, maybe you've done it in the past. And go ahead and write that one up. 6 stories I got. So I went to Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, and then made 100 books of chicken soup books after that. I said, how'd you get those stories? He said, Barb, you have to go after the stories. If you want prisoner stories, you go to the Association of Prisoners. If you want baseball stories, you have to go to the baseball league or whatever it is. So I've shifted my focus, and I will tell you, I'm just going to warn you that you guys are on my radar for doing acts of peacemaking, and we'll do a small exercise in a little bit to make that happen, to help it happen, let's say. But I sort of said to myself, so if you just have the energy to go after one audience, to actually practice this kind of peacemaking and then capture their stories, who would you go for? And I said, it's got to be kids. So I have now just finished teaching a group of high school kids in Peonia, at the Peonia Experiential Leadership Academy, and one in Crestone. That Crestone, I don't know, everybody knows a little bit about Crestone, but I knew Crestone as a town that had a rock shop when I was growing up. It is a big enough community to have 100 kids in their school. So, and not all the kids, some kids go to the public school there. So let me just tell you briefly, the kids in Peonia, they chose for their act of peacemaking story to interview elders in the community that felt isolated and devalued. And they interviewed 16 elders, and it was all videotaped, and we showed the videotapes at the Paradise Theater there, and the theater was packed for the first time since COVID happened. The kids in Crestone chose a project where they took a model that I used to teach the kids here how to be peace place mediators. So they learned that model. And by the way, both groups of kids had to read at least 10 stories and reflect on them. And answer questions like, what would you like to ask this woman? Or what would you like to tell this woman? And the women are going to get all those answers sent to them. But what they chose was teaching how to be peace place mediators to 4th and 5th grade kids in the school. And sure enough, they had to learn that model, so they've learned how to be a peace place mediator, and then they taught it to the littler kids. So there are 23 high school kids there, and there are, I think there were like 15 4th and 5th graders that have all done it. And for that work, those kids get, from the National Peace Academy, they get a certificate of conscious peacemaking, which they, and what it reads is for learning, reflecting upon, practicing, and applying multiple skills of conscious peacemaking, culminating in a gifted act of conscious peacemaking. This they can put on their college resumes, on their work resumes, under their pillow, put it away for years, whatever they want. But the Peace Academy was delighted to be able to give these out to the kids. So where to start with all this? Well, it's a good question. Thank you. You probably know about as much about it as I do. I've decided that when I passed 75, which happened several years ago, that I needed to quit pretending that I was alone in this trek. And I didn't quite pay attention to that when I signed up for these 2 high schools. And just like Sonia said, I've been exhausted driving back and forth to Crestone, taking the kids in at Pella, and starting a farm. So I've decided what I really need to do now is legacy work. So I think my next thing is to figure out how to write the curriculum that I've been teaching the preschools so that somebody else can teach it. How to teach teachers how to do that. And I got a call, I haven't had time to return it, but I need to do it quickly, of a woman that teaches at junior college. And there's another woman that teaches at junior college named Mrs. Biden. And so she wants to know if I would send her a book and if the book might be used as the text for a curriculum that she wants to teach. So I think the door has opened a little tiny bit for that. Okay, we can come to close with this poem that I just found the other day. There's a whole website called The World is Hurting. And they solicit anybody to write a poem on that theme. And this is what it says. The world is hurting. The world is hurting more than it ever has before. And do you know why? Because of the guy on the street with the sign that says, God hates fags. Because of the soldiers waving American flags. Because of the brainwashed millions watching TV. Because, well, we built a wall. But what if the world is hurting because of me? And what if the world is hurting because of us? We can condemn the media-fed fear and hate that separates nation from nation, us from them from us. We claim we're working for peace, and we sing songs of no more war, but what about the wars we fight with the people we love behind our own front doors? Or those bumper stickers that say, no blood for oil, that are stuck on the back of our gas-guzzling cars. It would make more sense if we had them stuck across our hearts. We need to look at our own part. Build a love revolution inside our own pounding hearts, and that alone could start the evolution of the entire human race. In a world of judgment, so much depends on the kindness of one friendly face. So build your compassions, build your grace. Your next breath could be the next Big Bang, the single saving spark for the lights that lights the fire. There will be no power any higher than you when you first save the Mother Earth that lives inside you. So let's build ourselves as beautiful as we want the world to be, as beautiful as we want the world to be. Wrap ourselves in light and give ourselves away. Everyone knows what we're against. Show them what we're for. Become the door that opens up to keeping people hoping. We want to not just point the way, but become the path that leads them there with everything that we do. This is by a young woman named Andrea Gibson. Thank you for coming.
Just going to take about 4 deep breaths together and take that all in. Thank you, Jana and Rick Olfick and the WE team for bringing Barb and I here today so she could share her story. It truly is for this time. And we're here to answer any questions and just to celebrate this work and have Barb say what's on her plate, what's on her stove right now. And how can we support her? Barb.
I just am touched at how prophetic the poem, the very last poem, is. It's as if it was written this morning. So I guess if I could say anything, it's like, I hope people don't get so discouraged or read so much tumultuous stuff on the media that they forget they have the capacity to turn around in their home, in their neighborhood, anywhere, and just start doing one after another acts of conscious peacemaking. It's the way, I mean, it's like the one-on-one things that are going to overwhelm the big, bold, bully things. So that would be one of my thoughts. I also feel like, especially through COVID and things like this, teaching teachers is a really good way to spend your energy, as opposed to going and trying to teach individual kids. So I'm working rather slowly, but I'm definitely working on bringing about a curriculum that can not only be for teachers, but it can be for entire schools. And it teaches 4th grade children how to be mediators. I take them off campus and teach them mediation skills, but then they can come back to the school and be mediators. But we found out that the schools themselves don't get it. So we had to teach the language and the process to the principals and the administrators and the lunchroom ladies and the bus drivers, things like that. And we now call them Peace Place schools. So that's where I'm sending my focus right now. I'm still in touch. For instance, when the Hamas attack happened, I interviewed Ruchama Marton. I didn't interview, I tried to get a hold of Ruchama Marton in Israel. And I just said, "Are you all right?" And I got back an answer that said, "Yes, thank you for checking." So I'm staying in touch with those women. I have no less regard for the amazing impact they have. But my job now is to wake up the peacemaker in everybody that's willing to go down that road.
That's a big job.
Yes, thank you.
But I really loved your presentation. I've been so looking forward to this, and I'm glad I can now say I've seen it. And there's a question: where can we get a copy of this poem?
The one that the
That
world
you just read? Yeah.
I don't know. Frankly, I wrote it down myself because I'm going to go hunt for it. It's by a young woman named Andrea Gibson, and I'm going to Google it because it was 2.5 years ago, which means it's under stacks of paper for me. I need to go to the computer and do it.
And oodles and gobs of emails and all that. So, oh my goodness. And Rita, thanks for all your work and help for Barb and putting this all together. I know that you're her, besides your own skills and accomplishments, you're Barb's tech person.
And my media mentor, yeah, totally.
Yes, media mentor. So that's a lot of work. How did you two meet?
Well,
Back in the day, back in the day.
it was back in the
Back in
day,
the
and
back in the day on a ski slope? Is that how you met?
As a mediator, I cannot tell you how we met.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you met, and that's the important thing. And you're doing incredible work. Um, I'm not seeing any questions, but which is too bad. But I would ask just this as peacemakers and people that you are involved in all the good stuff and thinking about the important things. How are you feeling these days?
Are you talking with Rita or me?
Both of you. How are you both feeling?
Rita, you go first.
Still trying to catch my breath about how quickly things are unraveling toward the direction of a beloved community that I thought we were, and I still think we're moving in that direction. It's just that my work right now is holding a space where I'm not othering anyone or anything. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And so being able to sit here today and watch the film, which I hadn't seen in a while, that's given me inspiration. And the bishop from the Washington Cathedral that spoke out the other
Oh,
day,
yes.
asking mercy, may mercy be bestowed. I think more of that language, more of the voices have to speak up in that way. And the work that Barb's done with the women peacemakers is certainly inspiration. I encourage people to find her book, maybe begin discussion groups in your community, see how, and don't be afraid to speak up. How am I being a peacemaker? And send your story into Barb. Just trying to stay present to this day, what is now, and to be involved with We the World and the incredible network that is available, and to stay in touch with those very positive energies that are happening, and yet they don't get splashed onto the mainstream media. So Rick and Jana, Birgit, Angel, thank you for your support to get this message out.
Too bad it takes an event for us to be able to do it, but at least we're doing it. And, may it continue all year round, of course, with special projects. But yes, it's important to shine our light and in the darkness and not despair. I mean, of course, we're human and we have our feelings, but it's always important to keep going forward and model what we know to be true. And Barb, how are you feeling?
Well, I think what I've done to cope with what's going on is to, for instance, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to go local and I'm going to give a talk to our Rotary Club about 4 different kinds of peacemaking we can introduce in our community right now. One is we could start a restorative justice program. Another is we could do more teaching of high school kids. I mean, when we interviewed 16 elders, it was a huge community event, I have to say. And we could also, I've been trained to do a peace game for 4th grade kids, which is a phenomenal way to start off. So I'm looking, and also there's a whole chunk of it about how people can personally think before they respond to anything.
Yes.
Take a breath, and then choose the path to peace, which is respectful listening, and try not to choose the blaming, the harming, the shaming, things like that. So it's an audience I know. It's a place I can go, and it leaves me sleeping quietly at night. And so I stay away from the stuff that makes me upset and angry. And I'm working on the curriculums, hopefully pretty soon I can say, hi, you want my curriculum? You want to go teach it at your junior college or your big
Mm.
college or whatever. So,
You're going to have to eat your Wheaties, huh?
yeah.
Well, being a Colorado mountain girl myself of the past, all you have to do is just go out into that beautiful sunshine when it's there and the blue skies and see the mountains and just feel all that peaceful energy, because that's what I miss, being away from the mountains. I just always felt so much peace and reverence and amazement, and so that really helped me, um, along the lines of like when something happens, I want to make a quick apology for our very beginning. Our little intro video didn't show up. It was so neat, and so if I acted like, what's going on, I'm sorry. I when it doesn't work the way I think it's supposed to, I get nervous. So anyway, but it all worked out, and that's what's important. It was a beautiful presentation. It's so wonderful to have you with us, and let's try to do more. So since we don't have any other questions, I'm thinking, oh, where are you going, Barb?
I'm going to show you a view
Oh,
of mountains right now.
we're seeing
Let,
your pretty sweater right now.
let you see more of my sweater than you need to, but let me just show you here. How about this?
Oh, Colorado, Colorado.
There you go, Yana. That's a Colorado hit for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm still on. Have you heard of Cowboy Brad in Estes Park? He does a lot of John Denver music, and so he's always sending pictures of. He used to be a park ranger too, so he sends a lot of pictures of Colorado. Like in my backyard while I'm hiking, and so I save all those when I need my
Oh, good.
Colorado fix.
Well, Yana, I will tell you one other thing I'm doing. I'm singing in a group called the Cowboy Chorale,
Oh, I heard you mention that.
and they sent me the flowers that are right behind us.
That's so pretty. Oh,
So
and you have a Bev Doodle print in the background. I can see there.
I do.
My ex-husband used to be published by Greenwich Workshop, and he did a
Wow.
lot of Colorado scenes. So I remember Bev. I don't know what she's doing these days, but she certainly has a following.
So
Anyway.
Yana, come home. Come home and visit.
Certainly will make it over there, and I would love to be able to meet you. That would be so exciting.
And thank you for putting your energy into this phenomenal long program. How many days is it?
It's well, we go to the end of February, so yeah, we haven't even gotten to February yet, and so you'll have to follow along and watch, because Brigade has put together so many amazing programs, and I'd really like you to watch that and let us know what you think, and let's collaborate together to think how we can keep this energy moving forward.
Barb
There you
is
go.
coming back on February 14th.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. See,
We're going to have a follow-up.
I should be talking about that. I come. Oh goodness, what day is it?
It's Valentine's Day.
Yes, that's right. I remember we talked about it. So yeah, I think we're meeting Monday, as a matter of fact. If only I could get my facts straight. Oh my goodness. Well, it is a couple hours later from you guys, so I guess I have an excuse. Do you have anything more you'd like to say before we go?
No, I don't think so. I think we're good. Rita, how
I think
about
we are too.
I just want to thank you, Jana, and all the We team for this opportunity, and didn't get much chance to get the word out before, but certainly going to spread the word after and get this link to this program out to lots of folks, because it's so timely. So
It is.
appreciate everyone so much. Birgit,
Thank
Angel,
you.
Jana, and Rick, love to you.
And though
Right back at you.
although he may not be looking, I want to thank the fellow that did the filming.
Oh, yes.
Dave Taylor, it's really a phenomenal job. It took him 2 years to gather the pictures and things like this, but it's a gift forever. So,
Well, it's wonderful, and it will live forever,
yes,
right?
definitely.
Yes, and be a model and lesson. Yes, Rita. Anything
Yeah.
else you'd like to say?
Cool Brick Studios is available here in Carbondale, and Dave can do remote work with artists. He is a gem in our community, and it is a world-class recording studio that he has. So Cool Brick Studios, Carbondale, Colorado.
How
Yeah.
cool. And Carbondale is close to Aspen, in case people don't know.
Yes, yes.
The beautiful Aspen.
Uh-huh. So thank you, everyone.
Yes.
And thank
Gotta
you.
wrap
So
it up.
I'll do my closing here, and then we'll say toodaloo. But thank you to Aspen. Aspen, that was my past dog's name. Thank you to Angel, our events director, and my tech assistant for today. And thank you to Barb and Rita. And thank you for joining our broadcast today. Remember, please join us and take action to be of service at we.net/MLK. And donations are gratefully appreciated at we.net/donate. Goodbye from all of us at We the World.
Yes.